This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. We want to welcome you to the Citizens Advisory Podcast, presented by the Citizens Advisory of Pennsylvania. I am Jess Stahlnecker, Executive Director. I'm joined once again by our Vice President, Amy Carrozza. She is one of our resident KOOTH experts. And she is going to give us some important updates today. It seems like the KOOTH train is moving a million miles an hour right now. We're kind of in the middle of a heated primary race, and we think that a lot of what is coming out is in response to the candidates and their positions on KOOTH. So we're going to share a few things with you. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on at Wyoming Area, what has gone on at Wyoming Area. We're going to talk about two articles that recently came out. And we're going to talk about just some red flags that we're seeing. I want to welcome Amy. We're going to if you have not heard about KOOTH or you're not really sure what we're talking about, I want to remind you that this is something that is high on our radar at Citizens Advisory. We have been studying this for almost 2 years now. Would you say? Yeah. And we have a lot of concerns, but if you're not sure, go back and listen to episode 4. Episode 4 was with Ed Brunn. We went over the whole, basics of KOOTH. And so, go back and listen to that first and then come and hear our updates. Before we get into our discussion, I do want to pause to tell you about two of our sponsors. Schnee, actually it is, legal services. Attorney Chad Schnee and his team strive to be accessible, responsive, and affordable. At Schnee Legal, your trust is their top priority. So go to schneelegal.com. That is SCHNEE legal.com. Our second sponsor is Murphy Wealth Management, operating out of Plains, Pennsylvania. They are a trustworthy, experienced group. You can call 570-357-2150 for all of your financial planning needs. We'll come back and we'll finish up some sponsors at the end. But thank you, Amy, for being here and really for all of your hard work and research on KOOTH. For those who are new and are hearing this for the first time, could you just tell us what KOOTH is and what made you start to look into it?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Jess. KOOTH is a digital mental health platform that originated in the UK in 2004. I was alerted first to KOOTH in October. So I guess it'll be 2 years in October, because it was October 2022 when I saw KOOTH show up on an agenda for our school board meeting as getting approval for a pilot program. So knowing, a little bit of the background of what was going on in terms of our government pushing mental health services on kids, I wanted to see what KOOTH was about. And what's interesting was at the time in October of 2022, there really was not a whole lot available on the web, as far as there were no studies that I could find, even though it had already been in the UK for, almost 20 years. There was one study that I found and Ed Brunn alerted me to, and that was a study where it was called gender. Hold on, let me just find it. It was gender ideation, or gender identity and suicide ideation. And it was written by a KOOTH employee. And it was alarming because it was mentioning how KOOTH users, it was written by a KOOTH employee named Charlotte Mandel. It was talking about how KOOTH users, the time period between 2014 and 2018, the percentage jumped 552% in users that were now identifying as non-binary or transgender. And at the same time, the suicide rate went up 61% in the same age group in the same time frame. So that alarmed me. And so then I again wanted to look out what KOOTH was about. So I found that there were numerous like I was able to get into create a KOOTH account,
Mhm.
and that was for the US, and there really wasn't a whole lot of articles in there. But I was also able to get into the KOOTH UK version through the number of podcasts and just article forums. There was a lot that I could find inside the platform. Then I really started to notice this platform has a huge, heavy focus on gender identity.
Yep.
And so that made me start to search. I'm just going to put in gender identity and KOOTH, transgender KOOTH, in the search engine.
Mhm.
And what I found, and this will tie everything into like the articles that are coming out later. I found one tweet that was written by a mother who also happened to be a psychologist, Dr. Katie Alcock. I tried to reach out to her, but I didn't get anywhere. But anyway, she mentioned in her tweet that this service, she was sending it to KOOTH. She said, "Hi, KOOTH. We got information about your service for our 10-year-old through a local link as it's provided in our area. I was able to sign up his real name." So it's like what a normal mom of a 10-year-old would do, signing in for him because she was encouraged by her practitioner to sign him up.
Mhm.
It asks for his gender and it suggests male, female, agender, gender fluid. He has no clue what those are. And this tweet was picked up by a group or a social, I guess it's more of like a media source called Transgender Trend. And Transgender Trend is a group that is trying to get alert parents that there is this gender ideology that is spreading through the UK, and they only use the gender affirming model. They never talk about that this could potentially be a phase that your kid's going through, or let them get through puberty before you do something drastic. They
Right.
own That's the UK. But what we see now in the UK is they're totally peeling that back, scaling it back, and they're actually raising alarms that this gender affirmation model is doing a lot of damage to the younger population, because
Right.
it's not it's crazy to see the jumps in people identifying as transgender. It wouldn't come naturally. It's
Mhm.
like brought on by social media, all kinds of things like that. And we know that.
Right.
We as parents know that. But what's happening in the US now is that we're seeing more of that gender identity push and gender ideology pushed. And KOOTH, even though it hasn't taken off in the US yet, and we don't see as much focus as it is in the UK. It's been in the UK for 20 years. We can only imagine what's going to do in the US in 20 years, right?
Right. Right.
So that was just something that I noticed. That was back in 2022. So now fast forward to now, and I've been following Transgender Trend for this entire time, and really still they're the only ones that are speaking out about what's happening. But we now know that there are a ton more articles that are coming out just recently from the UK that are basically mentioning how KOOTH can be harmful. So we as parents know that. We've been trying to sound the alarm. We know that Wyoming area is still heavy pushing KOOTH. They don't want to speak out against it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we want to like just
Yeah.
pause on the UK and switch to
Yeah,
uh,
we're going to talk more
Wyoming
about
area.
the UK because, like Amy said, what is happening now after 20 years of KOOTH there, and KOOTH is, we should also probably say too, that in the UK, KOOTH is not being used, was not being used as it is here. Like
Correct.
here, there's actually a pilot program where KOOTH is installed into schools as part of a grant from the state. So, we don't have to pay for it. It's not tax dollars, so to speak. It's a grant from the state. Well, I guess it is state, it is tax dollars at some point, um, but in the UK, it was strictly like kind of a voluntary thing, right? Like,
Yes.
it was
It
like
was they called it like a
a
self referral.
self-referral, right? Yes.
And that's totally different than a school actually promoting the use of the program.
And I think that that's a really good segue into what's happening at
Yeah.
Wyoming Area, right? So, just if you're, if you're following along, during the week of February 23rd, KOOTH representatives visited Wyoming Area. Now, Wyoming Area is part of this pilot program where they've installed KOOTH in the school. And, the KOOTH representatives were supposed to be doing an assembly. According to them, and we'll talk more about what happened at the school board meeting, but according to them, their technology wasn't working correctly. And so they were given the opportunity to actually go to classrooms to address students and to help them or encourage them to log into KOOTH. Another thing we want to say too is that KOOTH is monitoring the logins and they're counting that as success, right? So if more kids log in, they're saying that it's more successful. Okay. So they're encouraging these kids to log in at Wyoming Area and they're offering them candy and cookies and other incentives, right, to log in to a KOOTH account. This is all without parental knowledge. No parents knew that KOOTH would be in the building. No parents knew that they would be, kind of coaxing their kids to log into this platform. And so, of course, parents were outraged, and showed up in numbers at the school board meeting on February 27th. I have to say, and Amy and I, we weren't able to be there in person, but we followed the meeting. It was a very civil meeting. There was a lot of dialogue back and forth. It really didn't get out of control at all. It was lengthy, but it didn't get out of control. And the board promised to do their due diligence in researching KOOTH and really digging into the parents' concerns that they brought up. Fast forward to this month, Amy, you just happened to take a look at the Wyoming Area work session minutes, right? So this is where the school board meets privately and they do a work session. And there is not a single mention of KOOTH in the minutes from the last work session.
No, and I actually watched the entire work session. The work sessions are also open to the public. They don't do any voting in the work sessions, but they allow public comment, whatever. And I will say at the school board meeting prior, like Jess mentioned, it was extremely civil and the board was very accommodating to parents. They let parents really extend any type of time limit. They really had no, it was lengthy, but they really allowed every parent, even multiple times, to ask questions. So that was great. And there was no reason for any parent to think that they weren't going to look into KOOTH. I think one parent asked if they could put a pause on the program. They wouldn't do that at the time of the meeting, but they did promise that they would look into it. So I was assuming it would show up at least in the agenda. Now, with a work session, the agendas usually match. They have to match the actual board meeting, and there's nothing on the agenda for KOOTH. So I would say that tonight's board meeting, they will not be any discussion
or addressing it at all. Right.
Exactly.
So the public meeting is tonight at 7. It's also worth noting, and I think this is really interesting that you picked up on the fact that they are revising their 903 policy. So as you said, they were very accommodating to parents. The meeting did go long. It was a lengthy meeting, but they were very, very kind to let parents continue to speak even over the time limit. But I guess maybe to solve that problem, they have decided to revise their 903 policy and make it a lot harder and a lot more stringent in terms of parents speaking at school board meetings, including what we know is compelled speech, listing the topic that you plan to speak on prior to actually talking. So that's very interesting. That's actually not okay. And it's been found to be illegal. So they're going to do their first reading of their revised 903 policy tonight as well. So parents should definitely be on the lookout for that. That's to be continued. It'll be interesting to see how that goes because I'm sure parents are going to bring up the dreaded KOOTH again. We also should say too that they must have been tipped off that parents were going they were upset, and they actually had at the last school board meeting on February 27th, they actually had representatives from KOOTH there to answer some questions, which I personally don't think that they did their company any favors. They were disingenuous and just not very good defenders of their program. So we'll see what happens tonight. But definitely something to continue to pay attention to. Okay, so that was a couple weeks ago. Then last week, we find this article coming out of the UK. And I'm going to link this in the show notes so everybody can read both the original article from the Telegraph, which is a UK news source. The reason we're going to link that one is because it's interesting to look at the comments below. It's behind a paywall, so you do have to pay, but we have a free version that you can click on through Yahoo News, and I'm gonna post both links in the description. But let's talk a little bit about what those articles were about, because Amy, you stumbled on them kind of by accident, and they're kind of alarming. So let us know what those articles say.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because, like I said, I've been following Transgender Trend, and Transgender Trend a couple weeks ago, they posted a couple other articles about, how KOOTH is alarming. It's going behind parents' backs. Teachers were raising concerns, and even users themselves. So they had mentioned that they believed that it was going to be investigated by the NHS, which is their National Health Service. It's how their health system is set up in the UK. So I, was mentioning this to a friend on Thursday, March 21st, and I couldn't remember the health minister that was sort of blowing the whistle to Transgender Trend, and her name is Maria Caulfield. So I just happened to search her name, and literally 2 hours after this Telegraph article was published, I found it, and I wasn't even looking for it. But the title of it is Pro-Trans Website Funded by NHS Under Investigation. And in this article, it is saying that the National Health Service has been flooded with complaints, not just from parents, but teachers, and all saying the same things that we've been sort of raising the alarm with to our school boards, to our local legislators, that this website or this platform can be extremely dangerous, especially to girls, because and I don't know if this has ever really been mentioned before, but I know there was a study in the CDC where girls are like 3 times more likely to seek out social media for help with depression, anxiety, that sort of thing. So there was an alarming number of girls that were getting affirmed by KOOTH that they were born in the wrong body. Not to mention another issue that we know affects women more than men, anorexia. This article brought up that anorexia was another issue that was allowed to sort of run rampant on the platform because, as we've mentioned, how the discussion forums are set up, it's peer-to-peer interaction. Now it's moderated, but it's up to the moderator to determine if it's allowed conversation back and forth. So you can imagine girls encouraging other girls, well, this works for me, and this is what I try to do. They also mentioned in the article that there were a number of complaints because in KOOTH, they encourage users, girls, to try the breast binding if they, just to try it out. And they actually link ways to get them delivered to your home without parental knowledge. Like they link you to websites. So this is this article. So it's crazy because KOOTH has been there for 20 years, but it doesn't seem to be that people like parents are even finding out about it or really raising the alarms until now, which is nuts because, but you could see how something like that could happen. Like KOOTH, even in the US, could have snuck into our schools because our parents don't know about it. And 10 years later, we could finally be like, hey, why are all our kids thinking, they want to go
bodies or they're
yeah.
That's
crazy.
The thing too. It's like we, thank God that we have people like you and Ed and other people who kind of like, maybe accidentally or maybe, with some divine choreography stumbled upon, this because I feel like we're getting ahead of it before it becomes something really bad. And in the UK, they're seeing the effects 20 years of this now. And, so it's all the things that we've been saying and that we've been, worried about from day one. We're seeing, like, we have the example of what this could look like 20 years from now if we let this go. So I think that is, I mean, that's a profound article. Again, we'll link it. You should definitely read it. If we encourage all parents to read that. And I think it's really interesting because following that article, which we posted in our Facebook page, we were sharing with, people we know are concerned, other parents. There is an article that was published in the Hazleton Standard Speaker on Sunday, March 24th. So this is just 3 days later. There's a local opinion, and the headline is, I'm going to read it. KOOTH executive defends program offered in Hazleton area schools. Okay. First of all, should we just blow it up right now? First of all, KOOTH is not offered in Hazleton area schools. Okay. KOOTH is not there. So right off the cuff, this is not even, it's not even legit. Okay. It's not truthful. Secondly, the author of this local opinion piece is Bob McCullough, who is the VP of Clinical Strategy for KOOTH US. Where is he out of? Did we say Arizona or where?
Missouri.
Missouri.
According to LinkedIn, he's in Missouri.
Yeah, so he lives in Missouri, and he's writing this as a guest writer to the paper. So let's just break down a few key points in this article. Okay. Yeah. This is, a defense of KOOTH. Okay. So what are some of the things that really pop out at you, Amy?
Well, it was published from the Standard Speaker, which is a Hazleton newspaper. And we know that Hazleton, that area, is a large voting base for Mike Cabell, who is running for the 117th. Well, he's the incumbent, and he is running for re-election to the 117th district, right, against Jamie Walsh, who has publicly been always on the attack of KOOTH. Mm-hmm. Just recently, Cabell has come out to sort of jump on the anti-KOOTH train, but kind of in an interesting way, because he created legislation that bans the use or bans digital companies or mental health platforms from bribing kids to sign up. That's the bill. I mean, I think
you can't use candy. You can't use.
You can't, but he's not really. So is that really even an attack on KOOTH if you're just saying, well, let's just eliminate the bribing, but KOOTH itself is fine.
Right. Yeah.
So the article starts out by saying there's a misinformation campaign. We all love that word. Misinformation campaign by State Rep Mike Cabell. So this article doesn't mention, Jamie Walsh is going against KOOTH. They're saying that Mike Cabell has a misinformation campaign on KOOTH, and they throw in Lou Barletto as well because he's in Hazleton, right? So this defense of KOOTH, it's interesting because it honestly could potentially not really be. It could be a defense of KOOTH, but it also could be something that looks favorably on Mike Cabell, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's potentially the real reason why this article was published, because like Jess mentioned, KOOTH isn't even in Hazleton.
No.
So
it doesn't make any sense. It's really not, it really doesn't make much sense at all. I don't know if there's a way to link this article. I think maybe Amy froze. I don't know if there's a way to link this article to our show notes, but
why is it?
Go ahead, Amy, you're back. You froze for a second, but you're fine. I said, I don't know.
Sorry, I don't know.
I said, I don't know if there's a way to link this article to our show notes, but we're going to try to. I think there's probably
Yeah.
an online version.
I have a link. I have a link I'll
Good.
send to
Okay,
you.
perfect.
Yeah.
So everybody
Yeah.
definitely should read this too, because it's kind of, it almost doesn't make any sense. But anyway, what else in this article are they trying to say here?
Well, it's just mentioning that KOOTH is an excellent tool to use in mental health. And again, I'll go back to, if it is, and it was in the UK for 20 years, why are there no studies that can show that it actually is successful? And I
Right.
think we know why, because it is not. There is no way to prove that it's successful. In fact, many of us believe it's doing the exact opposite. It is deteriorating adolescents' mental health,
Yes.
and in a way that will lead them down an extremely dangerous, lonely path, and something that could end in, if those suicide percentages are accurate and they seem to only be increasing, that's extremely dangerous, frightening, and really sad. And we have too many local legislators that know all about this program, and they don't want to say anything. But we have an article, the one article in Hazleton, that's trying to put Cabell as if he's, and Lou as if they're the ones leading the charge, of in support of banning KOOTH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Banning. Yeah.
But I do want to mention that KOOTH did come out in the UK with a response back to that article,
Okay.
but they wanted to say that there is no formal investigation, that there's just been discussions with
Okay.
the NHS. But I mean,
Seems like it's moving in that direction though, because we are seeing a lot of
yes.
things coming out of the UK. That article is just one of them, but it really does seem like, there is no data that shows that KOOTH is helpful. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're actually seeing, from the UK, which really has paved the way for KOOTH, right? I mean, we're looking into how sometimes people are like, well, if I could just look into the future, right? And I could know. Well, guess what? Look at the UK, because they've had it there for 20 years and this is what's happening. And it's nothing positive. It's all negative. So I think that that's really an important point, and something for parents to really pay attention to and to focus on, is that, we actually do have an example of what we can look like in 20 years, and it's not pretty. It's not good. Like Amy said, it's a dangerous, lonely path, and these, the rates of suicide are only increasing. So, I think we'll certainly have more episodes on KOOTH, in the future. The story goes on. We've really dug in. We find it very fascinating and sort of strange that so many voices in politics have a hard time speaking out against this. And so we have our theories and we have some things that we're looking into. But I would suggest and encourage you all to do your due diligence. See, we've approached many legislators in our area, in the local vicinity, and we've told them, we've asked them questions. Amy, you specifically at different breakfasts, and we have videos of their responses, but they all refuse to speak out against it. And I don't know, part of me initially thought maybe, well, they just don't know enough about it. They're not studying it like we are. But now they should know enough, and they're still not. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And we know that KOOTH is looking to expand across this country. Also, a point to mention that KOOTH's headquarters in the United States is in 40 Fort, Pennsylvania, which is just, well, it's in your little town, Amy. So
yeah, I can see them from my house.
yeah, crazy. That building seems to be kind of like a shell of a building, but they're nonetheless trying to expand in the US, and they're starting right here in Pennsylvania. So something to definitely be on the lookout for. We will have Amy back on to talk. If there's any more updates, we'll certainly keep you updated. Before we wrap things up today, we just want to thank our final 3 sponsors. Royalty Self Storage. Their motto is "Your treasure, our vault." You can call 570-313-4480. Red's Barbershop in Ashley/Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, specializing in men's and boys cuts. They do fades, high and tights, flat tops, military style cuts. Call 570-417-7697. And R&D Memories in Hanover Township, events and catering specialists. We love them. We have a lot of our monthly meetings there. rndmemories.com. We have some great podcasts on tap for you in the next couple weeks. Oh, there's my dog. So we encourage you to definitely like, subscribe, share our podcast with concerned citizens. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. And remember that our membership is open. Go to our website at citizensadvisorypa.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter there. Check out what you get as a member. We had a really awesome guest last night in our monthly meeting that went out to our members. And you can also look for important documents, helpful things, helpful resources we have on our website. So thanks again, Amy.
Thank you so much
for all your hard work and research. You know, we couldn't, honestly, I can't imagine like not knowing about this program and how you kind of came across it just by being a parent that was paying attention to their school board agenda. That is so important. I think that that's kind of what I'm going to leave parents with, because we always like to leave with encouragement. You never know what you're going to find in those agendas. Even if you can't be at every school board meeting, even if you don't want to speak at every school board meeting, pay attention to the agendas, watch the board meetings online, you know, and if anything strikes you as being weird or something that you need to look into, you know, it's probably a good idea to do so. So thank you for being that diligent mom, Amy. We appreciate you.
Of course.
And for all your hard work. Yeah.
Yes. Happy Easter, everyone.
Yes. Happy Easter. We will be back next episode. Bye, everyone.